The air was dry in the rusted market of Old District 9. Metal roofs creaked under the wind, and the ground was covered in dust and oil. Shops stood in broken lines, their lights flickering weakly. Vendors shouted in many languages, each voice trying to be louder than the other, but no one looked at the small alien girl walking barefoot through the crowd. Her skin was pale blue, almost white, stretched thin over her bones. Her dark eyes searched every food stall with quiet desperation. Her clothes were torn and too small, and her arms held tightly to her empty belly. Behind her, hidden in a broken storage crate, her little sister waited, sick, cold, and too weak to cry anymore. The girl had asked 6 stalls already, each time. She had whispered the same question. Please, just a small piece of bread. I don't have credits. Each time, the answer was cruel and cold. No credits, no food. Now move, alien. She was 13 cycles old, but hunger made her look younger. She felt her knees growing weak, her vision swimming. But she couldn't stop not while her sister still breathed. She reached the 7th stall. A human vendor with a tired face. He was packing up, his hands moving slowly. She stood there for a long time, afraid to speak. The man looked up, surprised to see her. What do you want, kid? He asked, not unkindly. She didn't answer at first. Instead, she looked at the food he hadn't sold: soft bread, steamed meat, some fruit. Her lips trembled. And then she whispered, I have no credits. He raised an eyebrow, waiting. She swallowed hard, her throat dry and sore. I can give you my body. Just one meal. Please. The words hurt her mouth as she said them. She had heard others say it to older girls who survived in the back alleys. She didn't know what it really meant, only that people gave food in return. The man froze, his hands going still. He stared at her, not with hunger, but with disbelief. He didn't speak for a moment, then slowly shook his head. Wait here, he said. Turning away, she stood there, trembling, ready to run. But she couldn't move. A moment later, he returned with a clean plate. He placed 2 slices of bread, some warm meat, and a piece of fruit on it. He handed it to her without a word. She took it with shaking hands. Do I need to? She began to say, but he interrupted her. No, he said firmly. Just eat. She sat on a crate beside the stall and took a small bite. Her hands didn't stop shaking, and tears rolled down her cheeks. The food was soft, warm, and real. She hadn't tasted anything like this in days, maybe weeks. Her stomach cried with each bite, but her soul hurt even more. The man watched her for a while, and brought a blanket from the back. He placed it beside her without a word, then went back to cleaning. She looked at him, not understanding why was he helping her. Why didn't he take what she offered? Why didn't he look at her like the others did? Why? She finally asked, her voice small. He didn't turn around, just said, You're not a thing, kid. You're a person. She didn't know what to say to that. No one had ever called her that, not since her village was burned and her parents were taken when the plate was empty. She stood, slowly. She wrapped the leftover fruit in the blanket. Thank you, she whispered. The man nodded once. You got someone waiting? She hesitated, then said, My sister. She's very sick. He looked at her again, his face serious now. Come back tomorrow. I'll give you more. She didn't believe him, but she nodded anyway. Then she turned and disappeared into the dark alleyways. As she walked through the shadows, something inside her felt strange. Hope, maybe. It was a small thing, but it was warm, like the food in her belly. She reached the crate where her sister lay and gently unwrapped the fruit. Her sister opened. Her eyes, weak but alive. The girl smiled for the first time in days. Far behind her, in the rusted market, the human man watched the alley where she vanished. He had seen war, pain, and cruelty. But something in that girl's eyes reminded him of his own daughter. Long gone, long buried, he didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But he knew one thing: she wouldn't be alone anymore. The next morning, the sun rose weakly through a yellow sky. Dust floated in the air like forgotten memories. The rusted market was slowly waking up, with vendors opening their stalls. But one man stood already behind his counter, waiting quietly. He didn't know if the girl would return. Maybe she had eaten and vanished, like a shadow in the night. Maybe the hunger had finally taken her, and the small one she spoke of, still. He placed out 2 small loaves and some warm broth, just in case. An hour passed, then another. But then he saw her, the same tiny alien girl, barefoot and thin, holding her little sister in her arms. The smaller child was wrapped in the blanket he had given the night before. Her eyes were half closed, lips cracked, skin cold. The girl didn't speak, only walked slowly to the stall. Her legs were shaking. But she held her sister tight, like she was carrying the whole world. He said nothing, just pointed to the corner behind the counter. There was a wooden crate, a clean cloth, and 2 bowls of warm soup. She sat down without asking, placed her sister gently beside her, then lifted the spoon. Hand trembling again, the younger one made a small noise as the soup touched her lips. It wasn't a word, just a sound, but it felt like hope. The man crouched nearby, pretending to clean his tools, but he watched them from the corner of his eye. Their silence was loud, but not empty. It was the silence of survival. After a while, the girl looked up. "Thank you," she said. Her voice just a breath. He didn't respond with words, just nodded once. Then he handed her a small bottle. "Medicine," he said. "It's not much, but it helps with fever." She stared at it, eyes wide. "Why are you helping us?" She asked again, quietly. He looked away, his jaw tight. "Because someone once helped me," he said. She didn't understand, but she nodded anyway. In her world, kindness was strange, confusing but warm. That day, she stayed by the stall. Not as a beggar, but as a helper. She wiped the table, stacked empty crates, and even scared away a thief boy who tried to steal an apple. Her little sister slept in the shade, wrapped tight and safe. The man didn't say much, but he didn't stop her either. When the market closed, he handed her another bag of food. "Take it," he said. "I'll come back tomorrow." She wanted to say she would work for it, clean more, or help more. But he only said, "You already did." That night, she walked through the alley again. But something had changed. She didn't walk with her eyes down anymore. She looked up, once, at the sky. The stars were hidden behind clouds, but she looked anyway, like she was waiting for something better. In the shadows, someone watched her. A pair of yellow eyes glowed behind a broken pipe. A name passed between lips like poison froth. He had seen the girl at the stall, and he remembered her. She had escaped from his cage 2 months ago. He had sold many like her, taken from burned villages and destroyed colonies. But this one had cost him money. She had stabbed one of his men and run, and now he saw her walking freely in the human market. Smiling, eating, breathing. He clenched his teeth. She thinks she's safe. He growled. She thinks a human will protect her. He stepped back into the shadows. She learned, he said. "No one escapes me." Back at the old shelter, the girl fed her sister carefully. The medicine had helped, and the fever was less now. She looked at the food bag again. There was more than enough for 2 days, more than she had ever had in a long time. She thought about the human man, how he never asked her name, never touched her, never stared at her like the others did. He just gave, like he didn't want anything in return. Her heart didn't know what to do with that, but she held it close, like a seed, waiting to grow. The next morning, she returned again. This time, the man had 2 cups of tea ready. She smiled, shyly, and sat on the crate. Her little sister slept beside her. Wrapped in peace, he looked at her for the first time and said, "What's your name?" She blinked, then answered slowly, "Sira." He nodded. "I'm Daniel," he said. They shook hands. Like strangers turning into something else, not friends yet, but something new. Something more. She smiled again, this time without fear. But behind them, in a different alley, someone whispered her name, and it wasn't out of kindness. The third morning came like the last, dusty and slow. Sira arrived early. Her little sister bundled tightly in a thick cloth. Daniel already had a small space cleared behind the stall. A small heater hummed quietly, and there was a cot made. "From old foam and folded blankets, you can let her rest here," he said, pointing to the cot. Sira stood silently, staring at the little corner. It wasn't big, but it was warm, safe, and real. No rats, no mold, no dripping ceiling. She slowly placed her sister down, kissed her forehead, and sat beside her. Daniel handed her a warm bowl of porridge. She took it, whispering, "Thank you." He nodded once and went back. To setting up his stall, that day, she didn't just help, she stayed. She wiped, sorted, counted, and smiled. The other vendors began to notice. Some frowned, others watched quietly. One woman whispered, "Why is that human feeding trash?" Daniel heard it, but he said nothing. By evening, the little sister woke with a soft smile. Her fever had gone down, and her hands felt warmer. Daniel brought a small plush toy he had found in an old storage box. The girl took it with wide eyes and hugged it tight. Sira looked at him, confused. "I don't understand," she said. "Why do you care?" Daniel leaned against the wall, his voice low. "I had a daughter once," he said. "She died. Years ago." Silence hung between them, soft and heavy. "I couldn't protect her," he added. "But maybe I can protect someone else." Sira didn't speak, but she looked at him differently now, not like a stranger, but like someone who had also lost something, maybe everything. Later that night, Daniel pulled down the metal shutters of his stall. He turned to Sira, who stood silently. "With her sister, do you have anywhere to sleep tonight?" he asked. Sira hesitated, then shook her head. "We sleep in the crate," she whispered, "but it's cold, and last night someone tried to take her." Daniel thought for a moment, then unlocked a door behind his shop. It led into a narrow room filled with tools and wires. There was an old bed in the corner and a heater that buzzed quietly. "It's not much," he said, "but it's safe." Sira stepped inside slowly, eyes wide. She had never seen a room with 4 full walls and no holes in the roof. Daniel handed her a clean towel and a bottle of water. "You and your sister can stay here," he said. "No payment." Sira looked up at him, scared and unsure. "No one helps for free," she whispered. Daniel crouched to her level and said, "You don't owe me anything. Just sleep, eat, and stay alive." That night, Sira tucked her sister into the bed. She curled beside her, pulling the blanket. Up to their chins, warmth filled the room, but also fear. Because kindness was strange, and safety felt too quiet. Still, for the first time in many nights, she closed her eyes without shaking. But outside, danger walked with silent steps. Croth had been watching for days. He had followed Sira from the market to the shop. He had seen the human take her in. He wasn't angry. He was patient. "She's not running anymore," he whispered to himself. "She thinks she's safe." He traced her path in the dust with a knife, carving her name into the ground. "Soon," he said. "Very soon." Back inside, Daniel sat alone at his workbench. He pulled out a small box locked, and hidden under a pile of tools. Inside were old photos, a child's bracelet, and a badge with his name on it. Daniel K. Harlow, Earth Defense Unit, retired. He closed the box slowly. His hands were not soft hands. They were hands that had held rifles and built weapons. But today, they handed out food. He wasn't trying to be a hero. He was just tired of watching children break, while others looked away. In the early hours of morning, Sierra awoke suddenly. A sound of soft clang outside the wall. She crept toward the door and pressed her ear to the cold metal. Footsteps, slow and heavy, moved in the alley. She held her breath, waiting, then silence. She turned back toward her sister, who was still sleeping, but her heart pounded hard in her chest. She wrapped herself around the girl and stayed awake until sunrise. When Daniel opened the door in the morning, he found her sitting upright, her eyes tired, but alert. Someone was outside, she whispered. He looked at her carefully, then nodded. "I'll check the cams," he said. "Don't worry." But inside, he was already reaching for the old weapon hidden behind the shelf. He had seen this kind of silence before. It's a kind that comes before something terrible, and he would not let anyone hurt that girl. Not again, not ever. The day began quietly. But Sierra couldn't relax. She kept looking over her shoulder, her eyes darting toward every sound Daniel noticed, but didn't push her to speak. Instead, he worked quietly beside her, placing small tools on the table and tightening bolts. On his broken food heater, he had already checked the security cams. There had been movement in the alley, a shadow that passed by twice. Too fast to see the face, but slow enough to send a warning. Someone was watching them. Sierra sat close to her sister, spooning soft food into her mouth. The little one was eating better now, her cheeks slightly fuller, but fear was still in Sierra's eyes. Her hand trembled every time the doorbell rang, or someone passed by outside. Finally, Daniel asked softly, "Who's after you, Sierra?" She froze, the spoon hovering midair. Her lips parted, but no sound came out at first. Then she whispered, "A man named Croth." Daniel frowned. "Who is he?" Sierra looked down, her voice trembling. He used to lock girls like me in cages, sell us to bad people, humans, aliens, anyone." Her eyes became distant. "He took my parents, burned my village, said I was lucky to still be alive." Daniel clenched his jaw. He had heard stories like this on the outer colonies. After Earth's war ended, many soldiers had left some good, some bad. But people like Croth weren't just criminals. They were monsters in human skin. "I escaped," Sierra continued, her voice shaking. "I stabbed his guard and ran. I took my baby sister, but we've been hiding ever since." She looked at Daniel, her voice lower now. "If he finds me again, he won't sell me. He'll kill me." Daniel stood slowly and walked toward the back room. He opened a drawer and pulled out a long, old case. Inside was a clean, well-kept plasma pistol. He handed Sierra a small metal chip. "Wear this," he said. "It's a tracker only. I can see it." Her hands trembled as she took it. "You're not going to give me back to him?" Daniel shook his head. "Never, but far away in the city's darker alleys." Croth wasn't waiting anymore. He had watched enough. He had seen the human's kindness, the girl's comfort, and it disgusted him. "Tomorrow," he growled, "I take her back and I burn that shop to the ground." That evening, the sky turned red with dust storms. Daniel closed the shop early and brought both girls into the back room. He gave them warm food and placed an old cot for Sierra beside her sister's bed. "You're safe here," he said again. But even he wasn't sure anymore. That night, Sierra didn't sleep. She held her sister close and listened every creak. Every whisper of wind outside the walls made her heart race. She remembered Croth's hands, the way he laughed when she cried, the way the cages smelled like blood and fear and forgotten lives. She closed her eyes tightly, wishing she could forget, but memories stuck like glass, cutting her from inside. Suddenly, a loud bang hit the side of the building. She jumped, grabbing her sister. Daniel was already moving, his boots hitting the floor hard. He opened a hidden panel in the wall and pulled out a rifle. "Stay inside," he said, his voice calm but Sharp like ice, he stepped outside into the stormy dark. Wind whipped through the alley as shadows moved in the distance. "Croth!" Daniel shouted. "Come out!" For a few seconds, nothing moved. Then Croth appeared from behind a metal bin. Followed by 2 armed thugs, he smiled wide. "You shouldn't have taken what's mine," he said. "She's not yours." Daniel replied, raising the rifle, "She's a child." Croth laughed. "She's property, born on a no-name moon. No papers, no rights." Daniel didn't blink. "Step away," but Croth didn't move. "You're a tired man, human," he sneered. "You think one broken war hero can stop me?" Daniel pulled the trigger. The warning shot slammed into the wall beside Croth's head. The thug stepped back, fear growing. "I won't warn again," Daniel said. "This isn't war," Croth growled. "You'll pay for this." He turned and disappeared into the storm. But his words stayed behind, thick with threat inside. Sierra cried silently, holding her sister close. Daniel walked in slowly and locked every bolt behind him. "It's not over," she whispered. Daniel looked at her and said, "No, but we'll be ready." She nodded, and for the first time, her fear turned into something else. Not safety, but courage. She wasn't alone anymore, and she wasn't going to run again. The next day, the sky above District 9 stayed dark. The storm hadn't passed, and the market was quiet. Vendors stayed in, lights off, doors locked. Word had spread. Someone had fired a weapon last night, and people were afraid. Daniel cleaned his rifle in silence. His hands moved with memory, smooth and sure. He hadn't touched this weapon in years, not since the war. Not since the Earth Defense Unit had disbanded. He told himself he was done with killing. But Croth had crossed a line. Sierra stood nearby, watching. She didn't speak, but her eyes never left his hands. She noticed the scars on his knuckles, the burn marks near his wrist. "Who were you?" she asked quietly. Daniel looked up, his face calm but his eyes heavy. "I was a soldier," he said, "long ago." He didn't say more, but she knew. Not just any soldier, something more. Something dangerous. Later, when the wind softened, he opened a drawer and pulled out a black badge. It had a silver wolf on it. And a number. Unit 17. Ghost Pack. Sierra's breath caught. She had heard of Ghost Pack. Whispers in the refugee camps, stories about soldiers who moved like shadows. Fast, silent, deadly. Everyone thought you were gone. She whispered. "We are," Daniel replied. "Most of us." He placed the badge in his pocket and looked at her. "But I'm still here," he said. "And I will protect you." But across the city, Croth was preparing too. He wasn't alone anymore. He had called in favors, dirty cops, ex-mercenaries, even bounty hunters. "Bring me the girl," he told them, "and kill the human." He handed them a photo of Sierra, taken from a hidden camera, and another one of Daniel. Younger, in a soldier's uniform. One of the hunters laughed. "You want us to kill a Ghost Pack soldier?" Croth sneered. "He's old now, weak, hiding in a market stall." The hunter nodded slowly. "Then we'll burn him with it." That night, Daniel set up new security sensors around the shop. Sierra helped him run wires through the back alley and attach alert nodes to the rooftop. She had never seen tech like this. "It's illegal now, isn't it?" she asked. Daniel gave a small smile. "Most things that work well are." As they worked, she asked, "Why are you doing all this?" "For me?" Daniel stopped, then looked out into the street. "Because once, during the war, I had to leave a child behind," he said softly. "A little girl, no older than your sister, screaming as we pulled out." His voice broke for a moment. "I swore never again." Sierra lowered her head. "I thought all humans only cared about credits." Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. "Most do," he said. "But not all. Suddenly, the alarm flashed red. A sensor had been tripped. Daniel grabbed his rifle and moved toward the back entrance. "Stay here," he told Sierra. But she followed quietly at the alley gate. Two men stood in the shadows. One was tapping on the wall, trying to disable the sensor. The other held a stun baton. Daniel raised the rifle without hesitation. "Step back," he said. They turned, surprised. "Hey, we're just looking for something," one said with a smile. Daniel didn't smile back. "You're looking in the wrong place," he said. The man moved fast, reaching for a sidearm, but Daniel was faster. One warning shot hit the wall near his head. The two ran off into the night. Disappearing into smoke and shadow, Daniel returned inside, face hard. Sierra looked at him. "Breathing fast. They're coming," she said. Daniel nodded. "Yes, and?" "Next time, it won't be two." He began to set up more traps, pressure mines, trip alarms, and shock doors. The little shop now looked more like a bunker. Sierra watched him work and realized something. Daniel was not just a protector. He was a weapon, sleeping until now, and now he was awake. That night, she couldn't sleep again. She sat beside her sister, who was finally breathing softly without fever. Sierra's eyes stayed on the door. Part of her was still that scared, starving girl from the market. But another part, new and growing, was ready to fight. The past was coming for her. But this time, she wasn't alone. This time, the human beside her was not just kind. He was dangerous. And for the first time in her life, danger was on her side. The sun rose, weak and slow, over District 9. But inside the shop, something had changed. Sierra was no longer the silent shadow clinging to corners. She stood beside Daniel now, not as a lost girl, but as someone learning to stand. She helped him fix the outer wall, checked each sensor without needing to ask. She carried her sister with care, but moved with focus, not fear. When Daniel handed her a shock baton, she didn't hesitate to hold it. "You're learning fast," he said as she tested the weight. Sierra nodded. "I don't want to hide anymore." Daniel watched her closely. There was pain in her eyes still, but also something near resolve. "You don't have to fight," he said gently. "I do," she replied, "because they're not just after me anymore. They're after you too." Daniel gave a small smile. "You're brave," he said. Sierra shook her head. "I'm tired," she said. "Tired of running, tired of being scared." That day, the market stayed quiet again, but rumors spread. Someone tried to hit Daniel's shop. One vendor whispered, "Ghost pack soldier." "They say," another added. No one dared to confront him, but everyone watched. Daniel didn't care about the whispers. He kept his shop open, his tools sharp, his eyes sharper. Sierra stayed close, pretending to clean but scanning every face that walked past. Then she saw him, Croth, across the street. Pretending to buy wires from a merchant, his eyes met hers, and he smiled, not a friendly smile, but one full of promises, dark, cold promises. Sierra's hands shook slightly, but she didn't look away. She stared back, strong. Croth tilted his head and walked away, but she knew what he was doing. He was reminding her he was still close, still watching. That night, Sierra sat with her sister, holding her close. "She's almost better," she whispered to Daniel. Daniel nodded. "Soon. I'll try to get her to the refugee center across the ridge." He said, "It's safer there, better medicine." Sierra looked down, her voice uncertain. "Will they take her?" "Without papers." Daniel paused, then reached into his old lockbox. "I made you these," he said, pulling out forged identity chips, one for her, one for you. Sierra stared at them. "They say we're human citizens." Daniel shrugged. "Sometimes lies save lives." Tears filled her eyes, but she wiped them away quickly. "I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. Daniel looked at her seriously. "You're not a debt, Sira," he said. "You're someone worth saving." Later that night, she stood outside the shop, watching the street. The stars were barely visible, choked by city smog and broken lights. But Sira didn't care about the stars. She cared about the corners. The shadows, the silence, she was no longer afraid of. The dark now. She was waiting for it to move. Behind her, Daniel activated the motion mines. "Ready?" he asked. Sira turned to him, nodding. "I'm not running again," she said. Daniel handed her a compass. "If anything happens to me, take her and go." She stared at him, then shook her head. "No. If something happens to you, I fight." Daniel gave a quiet laugh. "You remind me of someone I used to know." "Who?" she asked. "My daughter," he said. Looking away, she was small, but fierce. For a long moment, they stood in silence. Not as protector and refugee, but as something closer. Family made by fire and kindness, not blood. Then, just passed. Midnight, the sensors flared red. Daniel grabbed his rifle. Sira took the shock baton. On the rooftop camera, 5 shapes appeared heavily armed, faces covered. Croth's people. "They're coming from both sides," Daniel said, voice calm. "Want me to run?" Sira asked, her eyes steady. "No," he said. "I want you to cover the left window." Sira moved fast, crawling behind crates and wires. She peeked out and saw one of the attackers creeping along the alley. She took a deep breath, pressed the shock baton against the metal pipe. When he passed by, she swung hard. The man dropped, stunned, his weapon sliding away. Sira grabbed it and crawled back inside. Daniel looked at her, surprised. "You just took down a trained fighter," he said. "I was hungry too long," she said, panting. "Now I fight for food and family." The others outside didn't get far. Daniel's traps were ready pressure mines, smoke grenades, and walls that shocked on touch. 2 of them ran off coughing. One more tripped the gas trigger and fell. Unconscious, Croth watched from the shadows. Furious, "She's not supposed to fight," he hissed. "She's supposed to beg." But Sira wasn't begging anymore. She stood beside Daniel. Gripping the stolen weapon, her hands were strong. Her eyes were hard. She was no longer just a girl. She was a survivor, and tomorrow she would become something even stronger. The morning after the attack was quiet, too quiet. Smoke still hung in the air from the traps Daniel had set off. Broken crates lay scattered in the alley, and the scorched marks on the wall told the story of what had happened. Daniel stood at the edge of the shop, his rifle in hand. He scanned every shadow, every rooftop. But there were no more footsteps, no more creeping figures, only silence. Inside, Sira sat beside her sister, who now slept peacefully. No fever, no shaking. Just soft breathing and calm. The girl clutched the little toy Daniel had given her like it was treasure. Sira watched her with tired eyes, but her shoulders were no longer hunched. She sat straight now, alert, aware, and unafraid. Daniel walked in and placed a warm cup beside her. "They didn't come back," he said. Sira nodded. "Cowards leave when you fight back." He gave her a small smile. "You were incredible last night." Sira looked at her hands, still a little sore from holding the weapon. "I didn't think I could do it," she whispered. Daniel crouched down, meeting her eyes. "You're stronger than you know." That afternoon, news spread fast. Croth's gang had taken a loss. Some of his men were in hiding. Others were caught by patrol drones, and one man, Croth himself, was badly wounded. He had lost a hand to Daniel's final trap, a searing electric charge meant to stop anyone who dared come too close. But Daniel wasn't done yet. He had made a decision. It wasn't enough to just protect Sira. He had to end it. He looked at her and said, "I'm leaving tonight. Going after Croth." Sira stood quickly. "Then I'm coming too." Daniel shook his head. "It's too dangerous." She stepped closer, eyes locked on his. So is letting him live. He paused, then nodded slowly. All right. But we moved together. Before they left, Daniel gave Sierra a new jacket, dark and strong, with small armor plates. She put it on like it was made for her. He also handed her a short-range blaster, modified for speed. I trust you, he said. They left at night. The city wrapped in quiet tension. Sierra carried her sister in a small hover cradle, hidden under a warm cloth. They traveled through old tunnels, paths Daniel remembered from his soldier days, and finally, they reached an old warehouse on the city's edge. Inside, Croth was hiding. Guarded by only 2 men now, Daniel and Sierra moved like shadows. One guard fell without a sound, stunned by Sierra's blaster. The other tried to run, but Daniel knocked him out with a single hit. Croth was sitting on a metal chair, his hand bandaged, his face full of hate. When he saw Sierra, he laughed. You think this changes anything? He hissed. You're still nothing, still trash. Sierra stepped forward, calm. I was nothing, she said, but now I have a name. She looked back at Daniel, then faced Croth again. I'm Sierra Harlow now. Croth's face twisted in confusion. You took his name. No, she said. He gave it to me. Then Daniel walked over, placing a small chip on Croth's chest. This is a trace beacon, he said. Galactic law will pick you up within the hour. You don't have the guts to kill me. Croth spat. Daniel's voice was quiet. No, but I've got the guts to let justice find you. They walked away, leaving Croth shouting behind them. For the first time, Sierra didn't feel afraid of his voice. She felt free. The next morning, the city buzzed with news. Croth was caught by planetary enforcers. His network collapsed within days. And Daniel's shop became something more. Not just a place for repairs, but a shelter. A place where broken things and broken people were fixed. Sierra helped run it. She repaired broken hovercarts, served soup to lost travelers, and told her story to anyone who listened. Her little sister began walking again, stronger each day and every night. She slept safely beside the only family she had left. Daniel stood beside Sierra, watching her speak to a group of refugees. He smiled quietly. She had grown so much from a starving girl who offered her body for food to a warrior who helped others survive one night as they closed the shop. Sierra looked up at the sky. The stars were finally clear. She took a deep breath and whispered, "Thank you." Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. "You saved yourself, kid," he said. "I just gave you the chance." And with that, Sierra smiled. She was no longer just a survivor. She was Sierra Harlow. Daughter of no one, family to a human, protector of those like her. A new name, a new life, a new family.